Hello and welcome to the OEM panel discussion, Right Fueling Your Fleet in Latin America. Our guests today are Marcelo Tezoto. He is responsible for national direct sales in South America at GM. Marcelo, welcome. Welcome to the Fleet Latam conference.
Thank you. Welcome.
And our second guest today is Aditya. Jairaj. He is Director, Chief Marketing Manager, Electric Vehicles, Marketing and Sales Strategy at Nissan Motor Corporation. Welcome also to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And finally, my co-moderator in this session will be Daniel Bland. He is our Fleet Latam editor and he is based in Brazil. Daniel, also welcome to this panel discussion.
Sure, Stephen. Glad to be here.
Gentlemen, you know it better than I do. Selecting the right vehicles for your business is crucial today. And this selection process goes far beyond the selection of the ideal car brand, the ideal models, or the vehicle size. More than ever, it is key to think also about the right powertrains if you want to make sure that your fleet is future-proof. And this is also the case in Latin America. So we would like to discuss with you some topics around vehicle fleet in Latin America and then move into more the sustainability aspect of the business. So to start, let's first examine how global and regional fleet decision makers need to prioritize their LATAM fleet management. And I have a first question for you, Marcelo. Can you briefly describe how do you see the key differences in terms of fleet sales, brand and model choice in Latin America at the moment with fleets? Are there particular differences that you are seeing?
Thank you, Steve. First of all, I'm glad to be here. So responding to questions and also helping the OEM, the companies to acquire the right vehicle for their fleet. So in terms of comparing from one country to another, so there are a lot of differences. So some vehicles we are importing from China, from just regarding GM. Some vehicles are producing at local level. And I think the best option for the companies is to see the vehicles which fits better for their fleet. So we have an imported vehicle that's coming from China, for instance, that they are the entry-level vehicles because most of the products in South America are the entry levels. And it's different when you compare US and Brazil and the other markets among South America. So which here it's considered as a mid-size or a large sedan vehicle, for instance, in the Malibu. In the US, is considered as a small vehicle for them. And going straight to the point and answer your question, it is important to know that the product portfolio in each country, so the technology inside of the vehicle in each country, and how can we leverage the fleet inside of the regions. One vehicle that fits in Argentina can be fitted in Brazil. For some companies, yes. For some companies, no. But I think that is the first thing that a company that are interested in acquiring a vehicle needs to know: the product portfolio at the local level. Second, I think the technology inside of the vehicle. So if they're looking for a price or if they're looking for security or technology. And because we have products and we have in each product, we have 3 levels. And the first one, that means is a basic vehicle, but it has a lot of technology and it has a lot of safety. But we have another twin level, which is the high end. And that means we have the park assistant, for instance. So They need to know the product, and they need to know the trim level, the technology they are looking for, which fits in their budget.
Okay. Daniel, I think that you have a follow-up question regarding the brand strategy for Marcelo.
Sure, Marcel. So yeah, you already talked a little bit about your brand strategy. If you have anything more that's more specific toward General Motors brand strategy, but I also have a question about, when the fleet manager are looking more for a regional or an international type of fleet request, how are you and GM organized to respond to this type of request on a regional or more international aspect?
Okay. For GM, so we have only one brand in South America. In Mexico, we have the same brands that are located in the US. So they're basically in Mexico, they are following the North America brand strategy. But it's brand strategy, but we have also in terms of product strategy, Mexico, we can divide it. A part of the Mexico is following the US or the North America, but part of the Mexico, they are following the South America because the market is pretty similar than the Brazil or the South American ones. They are looking for more small vehicles than big vehicles that the US and Canada, they work for that in that kind of a strategy. In South America, as I mentioned, we have only one brand that help us to have only one strategy, only one focus, and only one, if we have to put a lot of investment, we can choose Chevrolet. Chevrolet is the brand for General Motors. As some of you know, we have a department called in global sales located in headquarters. So if some company inside of South America, they know that they want to internationalize their fleet, or if they want to get only one quote for South America or for Latin America or for a global, so they can go to the headquarters and call and say or send an email asking some questions about quotation products. Probably send an RFI or RFP or RFQ, and we're going to be more than happy to respond, considering not only at the regional level, but also at the local level. Basically, the way that it works is we can get a questionnaire from the company at global level, but also we can get at a local level, and we can go and we can work from bottom up or from top down. So it can be done in both ways, and we can send a product portfolio, we can send the prices, we can send the technology inside of the vehicle, and also the right vehicle that attend at the local level their needs, because that it works. So we cannot force a vehicle that the customer doesn't want or doesn't have the budget to apply for it. So we need to understand from the customer's standpoint what he's looking for. If he's looking for a small vehicle but a cheap one, I mean the cheap one that considers a lot of technology and safety, but also the ones that has a lot of technology more than they want, if they're looking for, so we can provide. But if someone has a question regarding South America, I can be the person to respond. If a company wants to have a quotation from regional that includes Mexico, but as well as US and Canada, we have the global fleet sales department that work with us, and also more than happy to respond any kind of questions.
Okay. Good. I have another question now for Aditya. Aditya, we have seen until a few days ago that there were some issues with a big ship in the Suez Canal, and that also in terms of automotive, there is at the moment some questions about the supply. There is a shortage of some supplies. I would like to know from you, because you are working at one of the major global car manufacturers, Nissan, how the global chip shortage is affecting the automotive business in general, and probably also the export of parts, automotive parts, into other regions, like, for example, Latin America.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. So, the chip shortage as we see right now is quite severe, right? It affects different segments in different ways. It affects different manufacturers, I guess, with a little bit of different gravity. But overall, for the industry, it's quite significant, right? That's number one. So when we say it's significant, what does that mean? We're going to see some after effects of this. So availability in specific segments is still going to be a question mark for the near foreseeable future, right? So when I say near foreseeable future, perhaps it's 3 months, maybe it is 6 months. I think it's fair to say that for a good portion of calendar year 21, we'll see some effects of this shortage of chips. So I guess the point is, how does the industry react? How do OEMs react? I think it's a simple equation of economics, right? Supply and demand. When your supply goes down and your demand remains the same, then there'll be some market adjustments that will happen. Now, the assumption is the transaction price could go up. But we work in the auto industry, and one very important aspect is momentum. I think all manufacturers recognize that you have to keep the momentum. If momentum drops, to regain that momentum is not like flipping a switch. So I think there is going to be some guarded optimism in the manner in which transaction prices could adjust. But if we look at the US, for example, very simply, the total inventory that we have with dealers right now, total within the US, I believe it is the lowest since 2014 or somewhere there, right? So the numbers have gone down. I think there are some learnings for us, because of these changes. There are some learnings for us in terms of how we adapt, and going forward, maybe how we can make some changes. I think the proof will be in the pudding, where we can take some of these learnings and be prepared a little more if something like this were to happen again. So yes, it's a quite a different moment for the industry right now, but also gives the industry an opportunity to make some adjustments, right size your inventory, have the right inventory at the right time, and then slowly build up your inventory as the supply of semiconductors becomes a little more available in the market.
Is there also a direct impact for GM in Latin America, Marcelo?
Yes.
And what is that impact?
Yeah. I think it is impacting everybody. So auto industry, not only the automakers, but also other industries have been impacted as well. But with regards to GM, some of the plants in Mexico have been impacted. So some of them already mentioned, probably 1 week, 2 weeks will be off. And in South America, for instance, we have the plant in Brazil, the big one in Gravataí, which will be off for 3 months, April, May, and June, basically because of the shortage, the microprocessor shortage, and also other materials. Last year, we were having problems with not only with shortage from the ship, but also from other materials that are similar than the other industries. And they are in the same situation. But as mentioned by Aditya, I think probably we're going to have an impact in terms of the used vehicle price, especially in Brazil, prices for the used ones are going up and it's happening in all the places in South America. Basically, the value of the car for the industries, for the rental companies as well as for the fleet companies are going up. So the asset is going up, which is good because if you reduce the price or if you reduce the discount for these kind of customers, so probably they can pay a little bit more, they can pay a higher price because of the used value. So because of the TCO calculation. But we experienced some shortage. We have a plan in Gravataí and also in other manufacturers to reestablish probably in July. But
okay.
That is the plan, but we don't know the other variables that can be affecting the business. So I think 2 weeks ago there was a fire in Japan in a factory that produces the microchips. So that is going to create more for the auto industry. So I heard that a storm in Texas was another problem for the auto companies, but for the other markets. So we need to be prepared, I think, and the way that we can prepare not only the market but also the customers are giving the conditions, the terms and conditions probably will be the same. I mean the discount. So the discount that we can offer will be maintained. So that is good for the customers to know the discount will be the same. But also we can give to them the information about when they are going to have the vehicles, because that's what they need to know. They already know that the auto industry will have a problem. Not only the auto industry, but the whole industry will have a problem. But they need to know when are we going to be able to deliver the vehicles that they are looking for. So, and I think transparency it is a good part of the business. So, and I think it is the principle of the business in a B2B, transparency. So we can give them transparency. We can give them the information in terms of the discounts and so probably they are going to, not only they are going to be afraid of, but not afraid of, but it's not because they want the vehicles right away. But at least they're going to have the right information to keep the business or to put in an equation.
Okay, good. We are moving now to the sustainability part, the right fueling part. I would like to start with a question for Aditya, and then Daniel Blunt, you can follow up with a question for Marcelo. Aditya, how do you see the future of ICE vehicles? Are we going towards the end of petrol and diesel?
Sure, that's quite a loaded question, Stephen. So, here's the point. Before we make an assessment of what the future of petrol and diesel vehicles is, let's maybe take a moment to understand what is contributing to the shift from ICE to EVs, right? And what could further contribute to this. So, again, in no order of preference, number one is this environmental consciousness and emissions compliance from a shift coming from a government level. So it's a push, right? That's one. That exists in different levels in different countries, but at some point that's going to become even more significant. Number two is, I think, more important, and I feel that is customer demand. So again, if we look at customer demand, what is moving customers from ICE to EV? So very simply put, from what we've seen, Nissan has been in the EV market in the US now for over 10 years. We've got over 5 billion miles globally on the road when it comes to EVs. We have sold over 500,000 units worldwide, more than 150,000 in the US. And the key takeaway from our customers is once you drive an EV, once you experience an EV, there's no going back to ICE. And the reason for this is the ride comfort, is the ride experience, and also the smoothness of the drive.
Mhm.
It's that instant torque which attracts customers to EVs,
Mhm.
right? You have that instant torque at your disposal. So, more and more customers experience EVs, the lesser and lesser they're going to go back to ICE engines. And I have a case in point in my house. My wife has been driving a Leaf for the last 4 years, and the only thing she tells me is, I cannot drive an ICE car anymore. I just want to drive an EV because I like it. So, given this, customers are going to be asking for this experience more and more. Now, when does when is the melting point, or when is the complete shift? When will ICE engines be, out of the market totally? I think that's a crystal ball. But the
Mhm.
one thing we can say is customers are going to be demanding this new driving experience more and more, which will see a considerable shift from ICE to EVs. But there is still a certain segment of the market which will continue to be ICE.
Mhm.
Maybe it could be a small segment, but that will continue to stay. So I think it all depends on the customer, Stephen, and the customer will ultimately decide what happens.
Okay. Daniel, a follow-up question for you, perhaps?
Yeah, so I know what you're talking about, Aditya, about the instant torque. Yeah, I like the instant torque as well. I guess I want to ask Marcelo about what's happening in Latin America, South America, or Latin America in overall in terms of powertrain and the model mix within fleets. So we're talking about ICE or new powertrains like electric vehicles, or maybe you can mention ethanol in Brazil or whatever you think. What do you have to say about the powertrain mix within the region?
Yeah, within the region, Daniel, I think we can say that the powertrains, so the engines, have been reduced. So we used to have 2.0, 1.8 engines. Now we have 1.0 liter engines. And we have been introducing not only 1.0 turbo, but also 1.2 turbo. So basically the auto industry in South America, they have been reduced the size of the engine to a 1.0, but also aggregating the turbo engine, so that it creates a more powerful, so that creates a torque, but also the size of the engine. So the CO2 has been reduced.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it is a strategy for not only GM, but for the all manufacturers, because it costs less money comparing the other technologies in place. I'm not saying that we are not going for EV vehicles. We are going, but it's going to take, I think, a while, or it's going to take more time than North America region as well as Europe. So basically the industry here in South America plus Mexico, they are building the bridge. So instead of shifting at one time the entire market, so they need to create a bridge strategy. Bridge strategy is to reduce the size.
Do you feel more hybrids? I guess it's a transition, and then maybe electric thereafter, maybe.
Yeah, some companies are putting hybrid vehicles, but the price of the vehicles, so it costs probably the price of a hybrid vehicle here, especially for the fleet companies. It costs more money, and it goes to like a manager category. So it not goes to the reps or to the supervisors. So it can, of course, it can be acquired, but the price of the vehicles, it goes to a certain part of their fleet. Mm-hmm. So in order to attend the market, but also reducing the CO2, so the engines 1.0 on a 1.0 turbo and 1.2, so it is the right strategy to create that bridge. So of course, hybrid vehicles for certain fleets, so it is an opportunity. In GM, we don't have hybrid vehicles. We have the electric vehicles. So we have the Bolt that is coming from the US, the same as US has. And we have been successful in vehicles here in Brazil, but the problem here I see is, and the reason that it's going to take a while is the infrastructure. So we have the infrastructure or the right one. So the houses, so they need the infrastructure. So the places, they need the infrastructure. And we need to create a partnership with a company in order to
Their sound is not so good of Marcelo.
get a, and the prices of the expensive. So
okay, Marcelo, your sound is not so good, so we are going to switch to Aditya again. Aditya, Marcelo was talking about one of the issues, so charging infrastructure. Can charging infrastructure, Aditya, can that be an excuse for you not to switch to electric vehicles? What is your opinion on that, Aditya?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at the top reject reasons right now, so when I say reject reasons, customers who are rejecting EVs and still going for ICE, amongst the top three are lack of infrastructure, right? And then the other two are range, and then the other one sometimes is price. So again, if we deep dive a little bit in terms of charging infrastructure, so here are some fun facts. Within the US, actually, I think within the US and Canada, over 80% of customers charge at home primarily, right? So think of your EV like your cell phone. It's charged every morning when you leave the house, and there's not much you need to do. Just plug it into the wall. So that's how over 80% of customers are using their EVs today. So in terms of public infrastructure, yes, do we have some challenges? I think yes, we do have some challenges, but it's key to understand, what is the inhibitor? Is the inhibitor lack of infrastructure, or is the inhibitor lack of understanding, or lack of education, right? So
And
I think that's. Sorry, go ahead.
You think that's the latter part? It's the lack of education.
That's absolutely right. It's the lack of education, and the more customers are willing to just think of EVs rationally, I think the more we'll see the lack of inhibition due to public infrastructure. So when I say rationally, it means, in the normal course of your day or rather week or month, how many times do you need to charge away from home? Okay, people travel, they go from point A to point B, which could be several hundred kilometers or miles. So maybe then you need to do it. But how often does it happen? Once a month, maybe once a fortnight at the most, or maybe once in a couple of months. So when it comes to that, yes, you need public infrastructure, and there's a lot of focus that is now being put on public infrastructure. But it's the 80-20 rule, right? For more than 80% of the time, you don't need public infrastructure every day.
Yeah.
So as we are able to overcome this education barrier, I think more and more customers will be willing to take the plunge and say public infrastructure or charging infrastructure is not a constraint.
Okay, we will come to the final question. Daniel, perhaps you can start with Marcelo in terms of his favorite tip for fleet managers.
Yeah, so I just had a question about Marcelo. I guess the main tips for fleet managers in Latin America, you already mentioned a little bit about lowering CO2 emissions with the lower 1.0 car turbos, so that could help. Do you have any other tips for fleet managers in terms of lowering CO2 emissions and maybe related to the introduction of new powertrains?
The other tips that I can say to them is check the product portfolio available at local level. So they're going to understand the products available, the technology available, but also they need to know exactly what the needs are, because sometimes they are looking for spec vehicle than different than what they need. So they're looking for a vehicle with more spec or less spec. So this is what they need to know. So, and they need to, and they can talk to us, or they can talk to any company which is specialized and offer the right product. So as I mentioned to my team, as I mentioned to some of you in other panels, so the important for General Motors is to create a partnership. And also, and partnership is created between helping each other. So, and we can provide the right information. We are here to help, not only putting a product or a price in front of each customer. So we need to understand what they are looking for, what their needs are, and then provide the right information, provide the right product.
Okay, thank you. And then also for Aditya, you are, of course, an expert in North America and the US, but I can imagine that tips for North America can also count for Latin America. So what would be your main tip for fleet managers in Latin America in reducing CO2 emissions for their fleet?
I think this just goes back to the point of, what are the key drivers? So again, for fleet companies, it's total cost of ownership. As we move forward, as we see holistically, total cost of ownership, I think if we keep a focus on the benefits that EVs bring about, holistically, we'll see that it makes more and more of a business case. We just have to look at this with a slightly longer term perspective, but from a total cost of ownership, which is really crucial, we'll see some big wins in the near future.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Aditya from Nissan, Marcelo from GM, and Daniel Bland, my colleague of Fleet Latam. Thank you.